OK.
Voilà. Je vais vous présenter Francesca Dai. Il paraît que ce que j'ai ici dessus, c'est plus à jour. Il y a un peu des erreurs, alors je ne vais pas m'étendre. Elle est vétérinaire aussi, également, diplômée de l'université de Milan, ça je pensais juste, en 2012. Ensuite, elle avait fait, à la fin de ses études, un mémoire d'études sur l'évaluation des paramètres comportementaux liés à la douleur chronique chez les ânes. Alors bon, c'est chez les ânes, c'est peut-être pour ça qu'elle ne voulait pas trop que je dise ça. Je suis avec les longues oreilles, hein. Et puis, elle a fait un autre projet encore sur le bien-être animal, mais dans les élevages bovins, ovins, caprins et équins. Et elle a fait une thèse de doctorat, dont je ne connais pas le titre, mais elle va pouvoir vous dire. Et depuis 2014, elle travaille au département des sciences vétérinaires de l'université de Milan, donc à la même place qu'Emmanuela, que vous verrez tout à l'heure. Voilà.
Merci beaucoup. Bonjour à tous. So today, and thank you very much for inviting me to talk about housing system and why it is important for horse welfare and how does it impact on horse welfare. So first question is it a housing system important for horse welfare? Why it is important? Well, basically, as my colleagues already told you, if the environment is not good, it cannot fulfill the behavioral and physiological needs of the horse, and therefore the welfare of the horse will be compromised. So yes, housing system is important, and we are going to have a small literature review on what scientists say about housing system and horse welfare. So first of all, which are the behavioral and physiological needs of the horses that we should meet ideally? Of course, you know, nutrition is very important, but also movement and social interaction. They are social animals. They should interact with other horses outside, and they evolved to do this. Play is really important. We will see in a moment. Of course, rest and sleep, and Emanuela will tell you a little bit more about this. And of course, you know, health and safety is super important for horses. So my first question to the literature was, how do we keep horses nowadays? So as you can see, there are very different habits in different countries, but we can say that single box housing, which is the red bar, I think you see red. The red bar is the single box horses. So as you can see, single box housing is still the most frequent housing system for horses in different countries. So my question is, why do we choose, why do as owners, do we choose to use a single box housing system for horses? What are the perceived advantages for this? So in your opinion, why do we keep horses in box? Don't be shy again. Sorry? Okay, so because it's... Yeah, so she said that this is for the riders, so this is convenient for us. Okay, so it's more comfortable for us to keep them in boxes. Okay, other reason? Yeah?
Pour les problèmes en cas de blessure avec des congénères.
Okay, so they injure themselves, right? Yes, and with other horses maybe. Okay, so injuries, so health and safety, yes?
It's easier if you have to give specific food.
Okay, so nutrition, so to control the nutrition of the horse better. Okay, other reason?
Because we don't have enough space.
Okay, yes, we don't have enough space. This is very true in some countries, like Italy, for example. Yes. So yes, first of all, better nutrition management. So it's easy for us. We perceive that it's easier to better feed our horses if it is inside. Then parasite control, coat care, so in general, health care of the horse. We perceive that we can better control health care, so the horse will be better, basically. Protection from atmospheric agents, so from cold and hot seasons, we perceive that the horse inside is better protected from this. And then the reduction of risks of aggressive interaction with other horses. So again, the risk for them to be injured by social interactions. And of course, it is more practical for caretakers because we just go and take the horse and you don't have to go and play hide and seek with the horse if they are outside. So we are going to ask ourselves, is this true? Is single box actually better for all these reasons? So first of all, we are going to talk about nutrition. So you already seen this graph, and what I want to say in this graph is that what do wild horses do normally? They spend 60%, around 6% of their time in a day grazing, which means basically 14 hours a day. And so they basically eat the whole day long when they are awake. And what they do, they stand, they eat, they move, they eat, they move, they eat again. And for the rest of the time, of course, they do other things. But what they do when they are stable, when they are inside, basically they spend more than 60% of their time standing, doing nothing, watching the paint to dry. They do nothing. And they spend just 16% eating, which is a very short amount of time compared to what they should do in nature. And so what happened? It happened that they are prevented to satisfy highly motivated behavior, which are movement and grazing. And these two activities are really related to each other because, as I said, they eat, they move. And the prevention of this motivated behavior and the use a restricted feeding regime that we normally use with horses can increase bad things, like the development of stereotypies. As already said, oral stereotypies are related with feeding practices. And the reason is that they should eat all the day long, but they don't. And so they are bored and they are frustrated in this behavior. It increases the development of gastric ulcers. The stomach of the horse is not made to be empty as our stomach is made to. So the stomach should be full all the time, basically. And horses are not really good in controlling the pH of the stomach, so the acidity of the stomach. So if the stomach is not full, the development of gastric ulcers is more possible, let's say. And related to this, but also related to the fact that if the horse does not eat, it does not produce saliva, which is super important, as you know. And also for the fact that we tend to give them a lot of concentrated food, so a lot of calories. We fulfill their needs for calories, but we do not fulfill their needs for fibers. And fibers are really important for digestion. So what it happens is that the risk of colics is higher. On the other hand, as you already know, obesity is a big problem in our housing system because they eat enough, but they do not move enough. Because what we do for sport normally is not enough, and so they tend to become fat. And obesity is a problem because it increases the development of diseases like metabolic disease, insulin resistance, but also it increases the risk of colics, it increases the risk of laminitis, as you for sure know, and it decreases the performances. So it's not good for us because we want them to perform. So what we can do instead? Well, we could put horses in pasture. if you can. And actually, we are very worried that horses in pasture do not eat enough or do not eat good enough. But actually, what science says is that if they have access to a 24-hour good pasture, they satisfy or exceed their needs, their nutritional needs. So they eat enough, okay? And moreover, they are able to adapt their daily intake to the pasture availability and also to the climate changing. Because of course, for example, in winter, they need more energy than in summer. They are able to adapt their intake to this situation. So they tend to control themselves. And if you put them outside in a pasture, they are able to maintain a good body condition score, or even to improve it, which is maybe not good. But let's say that you do not have a pasture, but you have a paddock with no grass. What normally people do is they have this feeding system, so they put the hay inside a feeder, and the horse eat from the feeder. But actually, if you increase the number of feeding locations, you encourage the horse to have a more natural behavior. So basically, they eat and they move, which is what they would do in nature. And so you create a situation which is more similar to foraging, which is better for the horse. Talking about health, we are really worried that our horse is well enough, is healthy. But actually, is the horse in single boxes more healthy than outside in group housing, pasture or paddock, whatever? Well, first of all, we know that stables are a risk factor for respiratory problems. And actually, in single boxes, we have a range of respiratory problems from 3% to 60%, which is quite high. And also, they found 20% of ocular discharge, and all these problems are related to the quality of air. So basically, in a stable system, the ammonia level, the dust concentration, and the fungal presence in the air could be quite high. And this depends from the housing system, but also from the, of course, stable hygiene practices, and also the choice of the beddings. But altogether, this can really increase the level of ammonia, dust, and etc. in the air, creating all this problem. And actually, it has been seen that respiratory problems are much higher in single box horses than in horses kept outside in group. Another problem, as I told you before, is colic. This is really much more common in tie stalls or box horses. While if you increase the time on pasture per day and increase the paddock area, you reduce the risk of colics. And this is, again, because they can move more, and this is good for the digestive system, and also because they eat in a more natural way and they eat more fibers, basically. Group housing also encourages movement, and this is really good for the horse because this enhances the musculoskeletal development, which is what we want because we want sport horses, we want athletes, and they need to have a good muscular system. Okay, so foals kept outside have a better musculoskeletal system, but also adult horses kept outside in group have a better muscular development. And play plays a really important part in this because play, which is frequent, of course, more in foals than in adults, but is still present in adult horses if they can, is useful to acquire and improve motor skills. They learn how to move, basically. And also, they learn how to be horses with other horses. So they learn social skills, basically. Another topic is the use of horses for reproduction. So you may not have horses for sport, but you may have horses for reproduction. So you have stallions. Stallions are generally kept alone in single boxes because we are afraid that they fight with each other, so they get injured. And also we do not want them to reproduce when we don't want them to reproduce. And so they are just kept inside alone. But actually, socially isolated stallions have a reduced reproductive efficiency. So basically, we want them to reproduce, but they do not perform very well if they are alone. And also, they have more stereotypic behaviors, again, and actually, there is an increased level of aggression towards other horses and towards humans in socially isolated stallions. So they have something that we don't want, and we kept them inside for something that we are producing, basically, keeping them inside. Also, the level of self-mutilation behaviors is higher in these animals. And actually, we are really worried about keeping horses in group because of the fighting, but if you have a group which is stable because they are together for a long period of time, the risk of injuries is quite small, even if they change their hierarchy, because instead of fighting, so physically fighting, they have ritualized behaviors. So they tell each other that they may not like each other, but they do not fight a lot. Another thing that we are really worried about is thermoregulation, and of course it's really important, as Barbara told you before. So we know that the thermoneutral zone for the horses is between 5 and 25 degrees. And when it's hotter or is colder, what happens is that the horses do something to achieve the thermoneutral, to keep the temperature. So they change their behavior, and one of the behavior that they change is shelter seeking. So when do the horses seek for a shelter? Basically, when it's really windy, when it's rainy, heavy rain, when it's really hot, so when there is a lot of sun, and also when there are a lot of flies. They tend to go inside in this situation. So, of course, horses need a shelter. But we are really worried, and I think that, at least in Italy, we are really worried that our horses are cold in the winter. But studies done in very, very cold countries show that horses kept in group outside 24 hours a day in very, very cold climate, they spend most of their time outside. So they are fine staying outside even if it's really cold. There are no behavioral changes when the temperature drops from 0 to minus 20 degrees, which is really, really cold. But there is a positive correlation between shelter seeking and the wind speed. So it's not really the temperature the problem, but it's the wind. And in this case, horses prefer a two-entrance shelter. So instead of a shelter with just one door, they prefer to have two doors. So when we build shelters for horses outside, we should take this into consideration because the shelter will be used more if they have two doors. And another interesting thing to me when I was revising the literature is that snow, we are really worried about snow generally, but snow do not lead to the same heat loss as rain. So rain is worse for the horse than snow. When there is the snow, basically the horse can cope quite well with the temperature. So coming to behavior, which is always my topic, of course, we keep horses in box because we want them to be accessible, easy to keep, easy to work with, and manageable in an easy way. And we keep them in single boxes. But this prevents them from, again, from satisfying highly motivated behaviors. And in this case, we are talking about movement and social relationship. So horses are social animals. They should socialize with their co-specifics. But in 2017, we found that a large percentage of horses basically do not have really good social relationship. 22% of the horses that we evaluated in Europe do not have any possibility to have social contact, not either visual contact. They could not see any other horses. And the vast majority of them, maybe they can see other horses, but they could not really interact with other horses because just the 10% of the horses that we evaluated had the possibility to groom with other horses. And what it does is that it increased the development of undesired behavior, like aggression toward other horses. So we kept them inside not to fight with other horses, but this increased the aggressivity toward other horses. Aggression toward humans, so we think they are more manageable, but actually this increased the aggressiveness toward us. Self-mutilation, hyperreactivity, which is something that you do not want in a sport horses. And of course, the stereotypes. And you already heard about stereotypes a lot. I'm going just to give you some numbers. From literature, you will find that the percentage of horses kept in single boxes who perform stereotypes range from 14 to 32%, which is very high number. And it means that they have some kind of problems. And again, locomotor stereotypes are related to the lack of movement, to the frustration of their need to move freely. So actually, if you keep horses with other horses, how do behave? Well, young horses kept in group behave better during training. So when you keep foals all together and then you go to train these horses for sport or whatever, they perform better than foals kept in single boxes. And also adult horses that are kept in group have low reactivity levels toward humans, and this is a positive consequence because it reduces the risk for injuries for human beings. So they are basically more manageable, actually. And again, we are really worried about aggression between horses, but this level of aggression really decreases if you increase the group membership stability. So the more the group is stable, the less they will interact in an aggressive manner. And also, there is a correlation between the aggression level and the area per horse. So if you increase the available area per horse to at least 300 square meters, it reduces the aggression level between horses in the group. So if you have a stable group, meaning that you do not change each and every day the group composition, you will have a stable dominance relationship. It means that they do not spend all their time to try to decide who is the boss in the group. We are very worried about this, but this is not what happens in nature. They establish a hierarchy, and they tend to maintain this hierarchy until something changes. So maybe the horse who is the leader became very old, or maybe there is a young new foal that try to take the position, but otherwise the group remain basically similar in its hierarchy. You also give the horses to create the possibility to create stable networks of friendship. So we know that they are able to recognize the member of the group, and they create this relationship among members of the group. So you will see a higher number of positive interaction, like grooming, for example, or eating together, eating on the same spot, or playing together, because they make this friendship instead of having aggressive behaviors. And so you have actually a reduced number of aggressive behavior between members. Now you may be a little bit worried about the fact that if you keep the horse in group, you won't be able to take them and work with them. Because of course, the separation of a subject from the group in a social species as a horse is not really perceived in a positive manner, because you don't want to leave your friends, basically, and the same is for the horse. So the separation of a subject, for example, for work, could create some stress-related behavior in the horse that you separate, like snorting, defecation, increased locomotion, pawing, etc. But this expression of this behavior is really variable among individuals. So different individuals have different reaction to the separation from the group. And also, the reaction of the horse toward the separation from their group and being socially isolated for a certain amount of time can be diminished through appropriate habituation training. So training plays a really important role, and Emanuela will tell you more about this after, but habituation play a very important role in this, because if you train them properly to be separated to the group and then come back, they will react more calmly to the separation, and you will be able to work in a normal way, even if you keep them in group. And what it has been seen, even if the results are not super conclusive, so more research needs to be done on this, but if you train horses in pair to be separated from the others, this is probably less stressful than if you train them singly. So this could be an approach. So to conclude, horses are social animals. They are highly motivated to perform social behaviors and to move and eat on the move. And so we should keep them in group, and they will have better welfare if they are kept in group compared to individual housing. And there are various housing systems that you can choose to keep your horses together. And it really depends where you are, what you can afford, what is available for you, the space that you have. Here in Switzerland, you have very beautiful possibility to keep them all together. But you should search for a proper way for you to manage horses in group. Thank you very much. If you have any question.
Merci beaucoup, Francesca. Est-ce qu'il y a des questions?
No question, but a compliment to your last point. Separation is a thing that, in my opinion and in my experience, is something horses can learn, and they learn it better the younger they are. And if they learn it as a foal, it will be more consistent.
Yes, of course. Yes, this is something that we should work on since young ages. So we kept them in group, and we start training them to be separated once in a while for a period of time, and then increasing the period of time, of course.
I'm a horse breeder, and we practice this from the youngest age, and the return we have from the customers that they never have problems to separate.
Yes.
It's true.